Books Inspirational presents an unabridged recording of Within My Heart by Tamera Alexander, narrated by Robin Miles. This book is copyrighted 2010 by Tamera Alexander. This recording is copyrighted 2010 by Recorded Books, producer and publisher of Recorded Books Inspirational, an imprint dedicated to stories of faith and the human spirit. The author opens with this quote from Proverbs, chapter 4, verse 23. "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." And now, Within My Heart.
Prologue. Dusk, hours following the Battle of Nashville, December 17th, 1864. Half hidden beneath the bare-limbed canopy of a dogwood tree, the gravedigger kept a reverent distance, patiently waiting for the last whispered prayers to be uttered and for the final mourner to take her leave. Only then did he step into the fading light, a worn spool of string clutched tight in his gnarled hand. Not much time left. It would soon be dark. And the last grave still needed tending before the pewter skies let loose their winter white. The distant squeak of wagon wheels and the clomp of horses' hooves faded into the night, leaving only the faint chirrup of crickets to companion the silence. Jessup Colum lifted the lid of the oblong pine box, and with painstaking care, his arthritic fingers numb from the cold and marred with time and age, he tied a trailing length of string around the soldier's right wrist. Mindful not to tie the string over tight, he looped the other end through a tiny bell. He stared for a moment at the soldier's face, the fallen Confederate a mere boy judging from his features. Then he glanced around at the freshly covered graves. Deep in his bones, he knew what he was doing was right, even if a bit out of the ordinary. There was no malice in his actions, and no sin, most certainly. Nothing that would bring serious offense, though folks would surely think him a touch senile if they knew. So many ways for a man to die, yet only one was needed for the earth to cradle a body back from whence all life had come. Jessup turned that thought over in his mind as he'd done countless times before, not indifferent to the shadows stealing across the graveyard as the December sun hastened its retreat. Nightfall brought bitter cold, but not a breath of wind stirred, and each snowflake lofted downward from heaven, unhindered in its journey. He worked hurriedly to cover the last grave, mindful of the trailing string. After the last shovel of dirt, he straightened, slowly his crooked spine bearing the brunt of 42 years of tending this hallowed ground, and of the last few hours of burying the bloodied remnants the Federal Army had abandoned following their assault. If the once valiant Tennessee Army had been crippled in the battle at Franklin 2 weeks ago, then the past 2 days of fighting had delivered a mortal wound. Jessup lit a torch and stared over row after row of mounded earth, the light casting a burnished glow around him. Too many and too young were those who lay here, going before their time, before their lives had been lived out. He thought again of the young woman earlier who'd been last to take her leave. Dark-haired, with skin pale and smooth as cream, she'd knelt for the longest time at the grave on the far end, one he'd taken care in covering not 2 hours earlier, as he'd done the one at his feet just now. She'd huddled close by that grave, weeping, arms drawn around herself, looking as if she'd wanted to lay herself down and mark an end to her own life, what little she had left after losing the man buried there, a decorated lieutenant from the Tennessee Regiment and my only brother, she'd whispered through tears. The wound on the lieutenant's neck had told Jessup how the man had died, and the sutures and blood-stained bandages told him how hard some doctor had fought to save him. Shame how fast these soldiers were buried. No proper funeral, no time for one, not with the Federal Army bearing down hard, void of mercy, bent on conquering what little was left. He tugged the worn collar of his coat closer about his neck and begged the Almighty again to intervene, to put an end to this war. Surely it couldn't go on much longer. A heavy mist crept over the rise from the creek, shrouding the stone markers. The fog seemed to deepen the pungent aroma of upturned earth, and a beguiling trace of honeysuckle clung to the cool night air, despite the wild vine.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.